Can you know if, or how do you know if you are staring into the eyes of an imposter? Are you able to spot the signs of a narcissist in your life? What if you swear you love each other, but you are blinded by the love? Welcome to Passion Unlimited podcast. I am your host, psychotherapist, author, and founder of Fearless Love, Jianny Adamo. This is season 4, and I am featuring topics of my Amazon bestseller, From Love Trauma to Fearless Love. And my goal is to provide you with tips and strategies so that you can go from surviving to recovery and into thriving in love, life, and relationships. So, anyways, today's episode, I am going to be discussing the traits of a narcissist and the trap of trauma bonding. But before I get started, we have some celebration to do today. I'm so freaking excited. Anyways, I've gotten some reviews already on the audiobook. As you guys know, the audiobook was released over a week ago, and I received an evaluation or a review from Audiobook Reviewer. And some of the words that were used by Audiobook Reviewer, which would be like an online magazine that evaluates the new audiobooks that are released. Words that they used to describe my book was powerful delivery, an important message, and useful information for healing. They enjoyed my creative style. They obviously recognize it's a short but yet powerful and enjoyable book, and that this is a book that you cannot just listen to once. You need to kind of go back and listen to it again, because there's so much meat and there's so much information, and it's so thought-provoking. And I'm so excited that they actually understood. I was thrilled when I saw that whole review. And actually, for you to see that whole review, you can go to Audiobook Reviewer, and it's audiobookraviewer.com/from love trauma, and it's from and then little dash love dash trauma, and that will take you directly to their webpage, and you will see the audiobook reviewer review that they gave me. It's beyond, I'm just really excited, because I'm hoping this is just the beginning of the next stage that I want to take this book, which is really to get it into the hands of like the expanded distribution. And I want to ultimately turn it into a movie. So I'm really excited. I have lots of projects with this book. And so, okay, but let's get on with our episode today on trauma bonding and narcissists. And this is obviously a big theme in my book. It's ultimately why I wrote the book. So I'm going to continue with the Q&A format. So I'll be answering questions that people have submitted. And I will encourage you to please submit your questions to me. You can submit your questions through YouTube, through Facebook. I'm on Passion Unlimited Podcast Facebook group. You can join that group. It's open to the public. You can send me questions through Instagram, through LinkedIn, wherever you are connected to me. Feel free to send me those questions, and I'll be happy to answer them in my podcast. All right. So the first question I am going to address is, can you more clearly define what are the traits of a narcissist, and why did you write a book on the subject? Okay, so I've spoken a bit about narcissists, and I want to expand a little bit more today. So narcissism, every single one of us as human beings has narcissistic traits. So you don't have to be scared that, somebody may say, oh my God, you're a little on the narcissistic side. Because every one of us has narcissistic traits. It's what makes us thrive. It's what makes us compete. It's what makes us stay alive. So we will, go for our goals and We will be the ones who want to be in public speaking. So all of that, you require some narcissistic traits to be in front of an audience and be able to deliver a message. So, okay, so that is obviously not the narcissistic traits that we're going to be talking about in this episode or in my book. We're going to be talking about when we cross over to now having on that scale and that continuum, when you have too much narcissistic traits, eventually you now become toxic. You're no longer just surviving and thriving in this world. Now you are taking advantage of other human beings and you have no empathy or compassion. So those traits push you now into a stronger category, which you could ultimately, if you meet some of the requirements, have a personality disorder. When you're diagnosed with a personality disorder, this means that these are traits that have been with you basically all of your life. These things are seen as normal to you, but yet they cause you a lot of disruptions in life and in your career. So in occupation and your relationships and love and your family relationships, it causes you a lot of disruptions, and it causes those who love you and support you a lot of disruption and a lot of pain and suffering. So what are some of those traits? The first one is entitlement. So this is an attitude that everything and you want, you go after it in a way that you don't care if you hurt other people's feelings, and if you don't care if you're stealing from other people to get what you want. Nothing really matters to you but to get your wants and your needs met, and you go about it in a ruthless or very manipulative fashion. So you're very entitled. When you are in partnership with a loved one, you don't even think about their needs or their wants. And when they bring those things to you, it's actually like, you don't want to be bothered. You don't even care. There's another trait we call and label as grandiosity. And that one is you think you're better than everybody else and that nobody's good enough. You have to only associate with the best of the best, and you must have the biggest and the best of everything. Again, it's an attitude, or in fantasy, you can have these ideals of yourself. Then there's this other part where you are a person who would abuse power, and you can be a bully, you coerce people, you manipulate, and you can use aggressive force to get what you want, instead of being collaborative and instead of having good communication skills where it's a give and take and you can listen, you can be receptive, you kind of it's one way or the highway with you. You also, if you were a narcissist, you would be exploiting people's trust of you. You look to create relationships, which ultimately you will glean off of this other person or these other people that you're in relationship with. So again, it's a one-sided relationship. There's also this love affair with attention. You can't have enough attention. You're very jealous of people who get attention. That's another word that works with a narcissist. They're very jealous, very, very jealous. They don't like when their partner gets any attention because all the attention belongs to them, all the love belongs to them. They don't usually celebrate you and your great accomplishments. They only want to be celebrated themselves. And another trait of a narcissist is that they're emotional vampires. So that means that they will ultimately be very draining to work with. And if you are not in a relationship with one, let's just say you're single and you're dating, you will recognize sometimes that some of these narcissists that you go out on dates, the energy while you're sitting across from them is just so it's just like heavy, and it's sucking your energy because they don't have anything deep to contribute to the conversation. They don't have anything nice to say. It's just you have to it's just really this cloud sometimes of thick energy around them. And no matter you're trying to connect and you just can't seem to find a hole to connect with. Really, ultimately, you're looking for somewhere to connect with these people. And yet some of them can be very charming in the beginning. So they have these facades. So they can be also very charming. Some of them are dry like that, where you're like, I can't even find a way to connect with this person. And then there are some who are extremely charming and they have mastered the art of seduction. And those are quite dangerous because they will pull the wool over your eyes. And you may not know that they're a narcissist because they keep you laughing and they keep you smiling. And again, his all an act because they're wearing masks and they're not real or authentic. Okay. So moving on to our next question, what is trauma bonding and how does one bond to a narcissistic abuser? And this is a really good question. I titled my book, From Love Trauma to Fearless Love. The love trauma ultimately is a trauma bonding. So the idea of bonding is something that is good and beneficial. Human beings, we are social beings. So that means we are created, we are wired, we are designed for bonding, okay? We are happiest and we are happiest and healthiest when we are in safe, secure relationships from childhood all the way until old age. If we can have like really good, healthy relationships, all the studies show us these are the healthiest, these are the happiest, and even the wealthiest people on the planet are those with really good bonding relationships, really healthy love relationships, healthy families. Okay. And then the rest of us, we have a ton of issues with when we come from families that there's a lot of neglect or abuse. And then we have to grow and heal. And we have this huge journey to overcome and come back to our authentic self. So, okay. So in reference to trauma bonding. So trauma bonding is a term that's used to describe the misuse of fear, excitement, and sexual feelings that can be used as a trap to entangle another person. So with that, a narcissist, a sociopath, borderline personality individuals, they're usually quite charming because they're usually trying to seduce us and hook us into falling in love with them. And they misuse fear, excitement, and feeling and sexual feelings to do such things. Another term that we are now, like you could hear about, is the love bombing, and that's usually when a person is very focused on hooking you and making you fall in love with them. And so they are very persistent. You're going to get lots of phone calls, lots of texts every single day, like like it's just continuous. You'll get gifts, you'll get lots of, they will rescue you. They will try to rescue you. So they'll fix things for you. They will do stuff for your family. So they come across like they really care about you and they're really focused around you, but it's a lot of attention, a lot of energy, and it's very short amount of time. And they do that because they cannot keep up that behavior for long term. So in order to kind of get you in this trap to fall in love quickly, because they cannot sustain that good person behavior, it is all dumped on you first, in that first couple of weeks, maybe the first 3 weeks or so. All right. So, but what happens then is that you're going to then start seeing another side of them, and it's that there's inaction. So they're going to be very suggestive. They want to take you away. They want to take you to these really great places. All these future ideas and future plans are coming up so quickly, and you barely know this person. In fact, you may not even have gone out on a first date with this person, and they already are suggesting all these things for you. And so there's all these, they're very suggestive, planting all these seeds in your head for longing and ideas and fantasies. And then they don't come through. They don't call. Then you start recognizing that they make up excuses onto why they can't go out on a date or whatever. So there's this lack of integrity with what they're saying and what they're doing. Really, that's what it comes down to. So anyways, they create and they fabricate a person in which you will quickly fall in love, because they will hear about what you want in a relationship and start kind of like faking it for you. So you start, putting your guard down or letting your guard down, and ultimately it creates, they end up triggering your chemistry, and in that sense, now you have fallen in love with them in a very short period of time. You really don't know who this person is, and you are recognizing that there's very little boundaries between the two of you, but you are very much believing that they are who they say they are, and that they're going to do all this fabulous and wonderful stuff that they're telling you that they're going to do. All right. So in trauma bonding, what happens here is there's this period of intense love and excitement with this person that then is followed by abuse, neglect, mistreatment, abandonment, and a whole bunch of other crazy things that can happen a lot. I remember I had gone out with a guy for, I would say, maybe a few weeks, and every time I would see him at the organization that we met, because it was like a networking thing, he was so wonderful and giving me all this attention. He always saved a seat for me. So like, here we are sitting together, wonderful conversation. He, was a gentleman. Eventually we exchanged numbers, and I hardly ever heard from him, but yet I would see him and it was like the same treatment all over again. I was treated like a queen, but yet he would never call, he would not text initially. Then it just started up where there was some sort of communication, but he would never plan like the date. He would never really just ask me out. It had to happen after where we would meet, like with the networking, and we would have to go grab lunch afterwards or go do something afterwards, because he would not take the opportunity to organize himself or plan ahead with me. And I started to obviously see this pattern. And so I recognized like, this is not appropriate behavior for dating. So I started to question him, and, like he would have all these great excuses. But anyway, sooner or later, I started to see patterns. And this is why I want you to understand that you got to start seeing the patterns in order to recognize if you are in love with someone that's really more of a trauma bond. You will see patterns in their behaviors that are just weird and odd. And anyways, so continuing on with the trauma bond, another name for the trauma bond is Stockholm Syndrome, and that's more of the legal term. And also it's used like for the victims of like their hostages. That's really where that term came from. But it's the same idea of what happens in the brain, where fear, terror, dismay, fear and terror and just a lot of like confusion can be happening to you. And then at the same time, the brain decides to attach to the person who's causing all that confusion and terror and, and fear. And so you may be asking at this point, like, why would your brain do that? Well, that's because your brain is wired and set up for survival, and its primary purpose is to keep you alive. So what happens is, if you end up bonding with your abuser, right, what happens here is he's no longer scary, he's no longer a terror, and he's no longer so crazily confusing. Now you guys are like basically on the same team working together. And ultimately that's how the perpetrator or the narcissist likes it anyway, because they want to have control of you. And while you are in good spirits trying to be collaborative with your perpetrator, then you can probably, obviously in a situation, if you're a hostage, you could probably save yourself from being shot or killed, right? Because now you're going to be useful and purposeful to the narcissist or the perpetrator, right? Because no one's going to discard someone who's purposeful and useful. So this is part of what happens in the brain, and this is how we get tricked in order to stay alive and survive. And this happens a lot, obviously, in the domestic violence arena and all these dating relationships that are extremely toxic. All right, so let's move on to the next question because I spent a ton of time there. Okay, so 4, how does a narcissist know how to latch onto, who to latch onto? That is, what kind of person becomes a victim of narcissistic abuse, and how can someone avoid that plight? And I think I explained a little bit just now about how your brain is tricked, and your brain is actually trying to stay alive and is actually quite intelligent about keeping yourself alive. And a narcissist, at the end of the day, is targeting victims. They don't really know who you are just yet because they're targeting everybody. They are looking for people that have a lot to offer to a relationship. So if you have a lot to offer to a relationship, guess what? You are a prime candidate to be targeted by a narcissist. If you have nothing to offer anybody, then you don't have to be listening to my podcast, because most likely you will not be the target of a narcissist or a sociopath. These people want money, they want sex, they want beauty, they want youth, they want people who are very productive and effective because you have influence, you have resources to be exploited. These are the people that a narcissist is after, or a sociopath is after, okay? So this is just about the majority of us. Majority of us have a lot to offer a relationship. So therefore, this is a very important podcast for you to listen to. All right. So, and again, they use trickery, they use manipulation, they use love bombing, they use generous generous acts and kindness. They pretend to be noble. And then, you know, if there's a lot of mask wearing and future faking stuff, very suggestive, non-concrete. So when a man or a person is serious about you, they are concrete, they will be authentic, they will tell you who they are up front without being shy about details about their history or their relationships. They're not playing hide and seek. They're not just being suggestive. So these are some of the red flags that you might be looking for in a person who is fake. All right, so how do I recognize the signs of trauma bonding? And this is the most important part, I think, in our time for today. So this is for you to help yourself to figure out, are you really in love, or are you in a trauma bond with an abuser, with a narcissist? Some of the signs that you can figure out for yourself, or if it's a loved one, if you have a daughter or a child or a son, because I've had even fathers come to me worried about their sons because they realize that the son has been isolated and pulled away from the family ever since they got involved with this very seductive girlfriend. Okay, so this happens on both sides. All right. And so some of the signs that you may be dealing with a trauma bond is, that the person you are with is bad for you, but you keep going back to them. Okay. You want to leave the relationship. You want to leave this toxic person, but you find yourself always being drawn back into the relationship with this person. In the book that I wrote, Elena broke up with her narcissistic, sociopathic boyfriend 13 times. The 13th time, it was very traumatic for her because she ended up violated sexually with that relationship. So, and this is a forewarning for you guys who are involved right now with these toxic people and you keep going back and forth. Every time you keep going back to the relationship, the abuse gets bigger and bigger. Okay. It starts out with small little things and it continues down a really dark rabbit hole of deeper disrespects and deeper abusive behaviors. So in the beginning for her, what he began with was just like not showing up for a date. And it ends up like she's now being sexually violated by the end of their relationship. So please be aware of that the abuse grows every time you keep going back to the abuser. Another sign that you may be dealing with with trauma bonding or a trauma bond is that there is fear in cutting out this person from your life because of the emotional distress that you're going to go through. And basically that's because you will be going through withdrawal, because a trauma bond ultimately is an addiction to your narcissist or your abuser. And when you stop going back to your choice of things that you're addicted to, then you go through it with withdrawal. So withdrawal symptoms are a lot more than just grieving. There's a lot of physiological reactions. So that this is why it's so painful to stay away from them, because your body is just craving for these people, for this person. It's, again, you've been entrapped into a trauma bond. You've been entrapped into an addiction with another human being. Okay, another sign that you may be dealing with trauma bonding is that you are isolated and excluded from everyone in your life other than this person. For Elena, and which was me also early on in my life here in South Florida, I was already a bit on the isolated side because I was new to South Florida. So people who move to different parts of the country or other parts of the world and you don't have family or friends there, you can be very easily targeted, very, very easily targeted by a narcissist because you are already disconnected from your loved ones. And if you are not disconnected from your loved ones prior to getting involved with them, you will recognize that, like, all of your family, friends the majority have been alienated, and you're kind of finding yourself all alone with this person. And that's the way they like it, because they want full control of you. All right, so another sign, you worry about doing things that may upset the narcissist. And this can include hanging out with your friends and family or stopping activities that you once found enjoyable, all because you want to not piss them off or upset them. And this could even be, your hair. If you color your hair, you don't color your hair, whatever it is, because the narcissist will pick on your appearance. Oh, they pick on your appearance because they're trying to create this perfect image of you, perfect image of the next victim, because in their world, they only deserve the best of the best, and you cannot have any kind of imperfections, God forbid. So they're going to pick on your appearance, and they're constantly telling you how to dress and what to look, how to do your hair, how to do your makeup. And you'll see that in my book. Elena was being directed by her narcissist on how to make herself look, how she should be appearing to the world. Okay, another sign, you defend their negative behaviors to others. So you're going to find yourself like being in between, trying to like make a better image of them because you recognize that they're being rude, disrespectful to you in front of other people. So you'll make excuses up for them, and you want to make them look better than what they truly are. You also mislabel their abusive and manipulative manner, and you will call it immaturity. You will sometimes say that they're disrespectful or toxic, but instead of saying immaturity, disrespectful, or toxic, the truth is that they are abusive and manipulative and controlling. Those are their traits. So maybe just change those words around so you can start seeing the light, because I know it's hard when you're blinded by the love. Okay, so although you do prioritize your partner's happiness, they are not concerned with your happiness or your comfort. Their actions suggest that you don't matter. And this is so heart-wrenching. Oh my God, this is so heart-wrenching because you will bend over backwards to try to please them. And you recognize that your words go nowhere. Your actions are unappreciated, and yet you keep being treated like basically like garbage because your needs, your wants, your happiness, your comfort are always being sacrificed. They don't care what your needs are. So at this point, you will end up losing your sense of worth, and your sense of value. You will feel incompetent, powerless over your life and your relationship. And so this is very tragic at this point because this is extremely traumatizing for you. And yet, on the other hand, because you identify with the feelings of overbonding, which we will call love at this, that's what we call it when we're in the relationship, we can't see that this destroying all of who we are. And it's also creating a trap, because every time we call it love, every time we're seeing it as love and just being overbonded with them, what's happening is every time we function out of our innate wiring, which is to function from love, compassion, understanding, we're actually being entrapped further and further into this web of lies with this narcissist, which means we can't get the freak out of this relationship. We are so deeply entrapped, because every time we try to be a good human being, we're actually just getting pulled further and further into this Pandora's box with them. It's like a no way out, because the more we act in line with who we are as loving human beings, the more we're being taken advantage of and we don't see it. What are the long-term impacts of trauma bonding? And so basically you end up being subjugated. The victim is conditioned to accept that the price of submission is less than the price of resistance. So at this point, you're starting to accept all the crumbs. You don't think you're worth anything else. And of course, they're going to tell you that verbally as well, that they're the best thing that you're going to ever have. And submission to abuse is out of fear of evoking the abuser's retaliation, fear of not being able to survive financially, fear of losing the perceived emotional connection and the bond and the love that you feel like you share. So all those reasons are going to keep you entrapped in there. And the truth is that trauma bonds will strengthen over time. And unless you break the cycle of abuse, you have to recognize this as you being entrapped in a cycle of abuse where the perpetrator is sweet and then he's mean. They abuse and then they rescue. They idealize and then they devalue. This is all part of a cycle of abuse. How does one break the bond? All right, so how does one break free basically from the bond, the trauma bonding? The trauma fragments your sense of self, and it disconnects you from your sense of who you are. It disconnects you from, how you feel like you're not even connected to God at this point. Of course, you can never break that connection with God, but you feel like, and you're sensing like you can't even connect to, to God, to other people, to yourself. Everything is fragmented. You feel very isolated, very alone. You're in a very dark place. And so what happens is you will need to go into a no contact. Once you realize that you're dealing with a narcissist, that this person is toxic, they're abusive, and they're controlling your life and manipulating you, you will ultimately need to get into a no contact. And if you have children with this narcissist, you will have to figure out, how to work around with the children. And I highly recommend only communicating through email, not through the phone or texting, so that this way everything is documented. Once you go into this no contact, it is time for a detox, because again, this is a sex and love addiction that you've got that's been created through this trauma bonding with this narcissist. So you got to detox. You got to find a therapist who knows how to work with trauma bondings, who understands narcissists and the whole world of narcissists, so that you can heal. You're going to have to confront your fears and the shame that comes through this trauma bonding experience. And the journey of healing is one where we recognize the abuse, and we then are able to grant forgiveness and learn to love yourself unconditionally. This is the journey that Elena had to go through. As you read or listen to the audiobook of From Love Trauma to Fearless Love, she had to confront all those demons. It was a very painful experience for Elena, but she turned to art. She turned to the Argentine tango. She turned to music and dance, as well as to therapy, in reference to helping her journey to get to the other side. And what I want to leave you with today is that no matter what kind of trauma, no matter what kind of abuse you have sustained, you can go through the healing journey and get to the other side and be more complete, more whole, more powerful as a human being. Because of your experience, you will gain wisdom and knowledge and more deeper self-compassion and self-love. And in turn, you're able to actually give the world and people in your life more compassion and more love as well. So we are on season 4 of Passion Unlimited podcast, from love trauma to fearless love, to help you to survive, recover, and thrive in love, life, and relationships. Please subscribe. And if you have not read the book, please feel free to either order the book on Amazon. The audiobook is on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. And you can subscribe to my podcast through any of the podcast stations, from iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, and especially on YouTube. If you want to watch me record these episodes, you can watch me on YouTube and subscribe and leave me comments there. And you can find me on Instagram under Jianny Adamo. And of course, the Facebook group is under Passion Unlimited Podcast. And again, I hope you have yourself a beautiful copy of my book, or you can order the audiobook online. Thank you so much. Have a great week.